Hello parents, my name is Laura Jaeggi and I'm the GATE coordinator at Artist Magnet. I wanted to thank you guys for joining me for a little while so I can explain to you a little bit about our GATE program, what your expectations as a parent are, and a little bit about the process of how our GATE students are identified. So for the goal for this meeting is briefly just go over what the GATE program looks like for LA Unified, talk a little bit about what some truths and some myths are in terms of what being gifted might mean, ways to identify a gifted and talented student, ways in which gifted and talented students are identified within the classroom and the process involved in having them join the GATE program, ways in which you can help, and ways in which the teachers can help support their gifted and talentedness, what it means to have differentiation in a classroom, and then ways in which that you can sort of help and support your students while they're at home. So the Gifted and Talented program for LA Unified, their goal of the program is to identify gifted and talented students, including those from diverse racial, socioeconomic, linguistic, and cultural backgrounds, and provide high quality, differentiated opportunities for learning that meets students' unique abilities and talents. And so what that means is that we want to make sure that students are being identified and supported in the ways in which that they excel, both performance-wise, intellect-wise, and leadership-wise, and to make sure that those students are given a number of different opportunities to flourish in those areas of expertise. Some of the myths about gifted and talented students that we've heard previously is that our gifted and talented students receive special preferential treatment as opposed to what would be considered a regular student. And the rebuttal to that is that fair treatment doesn't always look the same, that not every student is going to have the exact same education and curriculum delivered to them in terms of their ability levels. What we want to see happen is that students are learning at their ability level, still feeling challenged, still feeling supported, but the ways in which that curriculum is going to be given to the students might look a little bit different from student to student. I think some of the other expectations for gifted students is that many adults expect that they will be able to flourish on their own, and that's not always the case. Oftentimes gifted students need a little bit of extra support, a little bit of extra guidance in terms of making sure that they're accomplishing to their fullest ability. And so that is the role of myself as the GATE coordinator, that is the role of Ms. Mashler as our principal, and that's certainly the role of each of the teachers that we have on campus. I think oftentimes adults expect that gifted students should just fit in with the regular students and sort of fit themselves to the mold of everybody else in their class. And while they don't necessarily need to be treated with kid gloves, they should also not be expected to hide their skills and their qualities and their special abilities. And in fact, they should be celebrated for them and given opportunities to demonstrate these talents as often as possible. And finally, I think one of the final myths that needs to be sort of dispelled is that gifted students in special programs will end up with social and emotional problems, that they'll feel sort of singled out or different. And so there's certainly a fine line between celebrating our gifted and talented students and sort of putting them under a microscope and making them feel sort of alienated from the rest of their community. And what I think needs to be understood instead is that as long as our gifted and talented students are being celebrated for those abilities and not alienated for them, that they'll feel the self-confidence and the autonomy and the independence to sort of forge out on their own and explore other opportunities to demonstrate those abilities as well. So some of the characteristics that you might want to look out for in a potentially gifted or talented student, they learn things incredibly quickly. They have lots and lots of energy. They might acquire new languages or just new skills at an incredibly rapid pace, quicker than their classmates might otherwise learn. They are oftentimes a little bit more mature than their classmates and other students their age. Very often they seem to get along with classmates who are older than them or adults more so than students of their own age instead. Some of our gifted and talented students we've seen in the past who are sort of struggling with that ability to demonstrate their abilities oftentimes seek negative attention as a way of sort of maybe looking for help and looking for that identification that they're not otherwise getting. They're incredibly good at solving problems. They have a much longer attention span than many of their classmates. And so if you feel that you might have a student at home that is exhibiting any of these behaviors, they're certainly ones that you're going to want to put on my radar so we can start that identification process. So some of the things that our gifted and talented students sort of struggle with on their own is feeling different. And again, like I said before, there is a difference between feeling celebrated and feeling supported in those skills and those talents that make them so exceptional, and feeling like they're sort of alienated or put under a microscope. And so we certainly don't want to marginalize our exceptional students, but just allow them to flourish in whatever capacity they find their strengths in. They certainly are going to still need support dealing with stress. There's a lot of anxiety, I think, in feeling like they need to outperform their classmates 100% of the time, and we need to make sure that we have realistic expectations for our gifted and talented students and not set the bar unreasonably high for them. We want to make sure that they are developing appropriate problem-solving skills that are within their wheelhouse and their capacity for understanding. We want to make sure that they have plenty of opportunities to interact and socialize with their other classmates, as well as students who share similar abilities and talents. And we want to make sure that we're also recognizing that our gifted and talented students are still students. They're still 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders and not small adults. And so we have to make sure that we are not setting unreasonably high expectations for our gifted and talented students. There's a number of different categories that gifted and talented students can be identified. So the first three are based on academics, intellectual abilities. These three are all based on assessments either by the GATE psychologist or an academic assessment that they would need to take. The second four would be based on either performing arts talent or studio arts talent or their leadership ability. And these four GATE identifications are each determined based on a portfolio submission or an artistic demonstration that they would do with a district themselves. So a couple things to keep in mind for these identifications. The first one is the high achievement is the only one that is based entirely on test scores. High ability, so skipping back real quick, the intellectual ability, there is certain standards by which they would need to be performing above a certain percentile for them to be deemed high performing. And then the rest of those categories really are determined just by a portfolio or a demonstration. So I think it's important to sort of dispel those misconceptions that gifted and talented is only based on intellectual ability, a sort of high IQ. There's a number of different ways that students can be identified as gifted or talented. And certainly at our tests, we have many of our students who fall under the performance and leadership categories because of the exceptional artistic ability that we see in our students here. So in terms of referral, the process that you would see happening on campus, if we had an administrator or teacher who identified a student as potentially being gifted who had not otherwise already been identified, they would make sure that they put that student's name on my radar, so that I might observe that student in class. I might start collecting work samples or art samples from that student, attending performances perhaps of that student, to just sort of get a baseline for what identifiers their other teachers are seeing in them that would deem them gifted and talented. After conversations with other teachers and other administrators to see if our assessment sort of matches, those referrals would be then logged into our student information system, MySys, to have a permanent record that identification, that initial identification had taken place. I think it's also important to note, however, that due to the school closures, much of this identification process is put on hold right now, because the meetings and the assessments with the gate psychologist with the district are not taking place right now. So the referrals will be logged into MySys, and then once the campuses open up again and we are allowed to safely do the assessments with the school psychologist, then the process can move forward. So as I was stating previously, the term highly gifted is referenced specifically to intellectual ability, more so than a creative ability. And there's a certain percentile above which they would need to be performing on an intellectual assessment that would be given by the psychologist with the district. Students who achieve above that 99 percentile in this assessment would be able to enroll in highly gifted magnets. And underneath that initial expectation of the 99.9, if they're fall just below that, they would still be able to essentially be given a waiver and be deemed highly gifted as well. So I think it's also important to understand that identifying our students is not our end goal. I think that really that's only the beginning of the process, is ensuring that our gifted and talented students are identified and the proper supports are put in place to make sure that these students are given the opportunities for enrichment and rigor and challenge, both academically and artistically, depending on how they're identified. And so identification is not the end of the line. I think that identification is an important part of the process, and I think that all of the teachers at ARTES are strong advocates for ensuring that the students who should be identified as gifted and talented are, and ensure that that process is moved forward as quickly as possible so that the supports can be put in place. So as a parent, if you are wanting to ask the questions of the teachers to make sure that your student, your son or daughter, is being properly supported and receiving those supports, some of the things that you might want to look for in those conversations is teachers talking about a cluster model. So students being grouped together in magnet classes, as it were. In the case of our campus, our entire campus is a magnet, and so our GATE students are sort of interspersed in honors classes, in AP classes, in LA Mission College classes, and then in the advanced level classes for the arts programs. There's opportunities for enrollment in conservatories of fine arts. There's opportunities for enrollment in schools of enriched studies or in highly gifted magnets. And again, all of those things are sort of determined based on your student's identification. So the goals of our GATE program specifically, we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our gifted and talented students at every turn, whether they're in terms of their core academic classes or in their arts and elective classes. We want to make sure that our students always feel supported, always feel challenged, and always feel like they have opportunities for enrichment and for growth. We want to make sure that we're always looking at our curriculum to ensure that it is being differentiated, and the curriculum that the students are receiving fits their academic and their artistic needs and addresses their ability levels in an appropriate manner. We want to make sure that the identification process is happening in a timely fashion, and that it's sort of an ongoing process. It's not a sort of seasonal thing where kids are only identified in fall and then the process stops. It's always happening. We're always looking, as it were, for new talent. And so even if the timelines are maybe halted for right now at the district level, we want to make sure that we have the proper procedures and the proper records in place for new students who could potentially be entering that program. So ultimately, the bottom line for the GATE program at our tests, or at any campus for that matter, is the ways in which the teachers and the school itself is going to address that differentiation. How are they going to address the academic and the leadership and the artistic needs of those students? And so some of the ways that you're going to see that happening is in a faster pacing in classes. Certainly in the honors and the AP programs, you're going to see sort of a quicker pace in terms of how much the students are expected to learn and the pace at which they're expected to learn it. That students have access to resources and curriculum that are above their given grade level. So if they're a freshman, they're not only expected to read 9th grade appropriate textbooks and novels and resources of that nature, that they can, things that engage them and things that inspire them and things that encourage them to learn more. We want to make sure that our students have access to those materials at all times, that the assessments in our different classes are geared appropriately to the ability levels of our students. And so if the end result is to provide, say, an essay in a literature class, what a highly gifted student might be expected to produce will look different than what the average grade level student would be expected to produce instead. And again, it would be comparable to what that student's ability level is. Providing opportunities for independent study certainly is an option. And so if a GATE student is enrolled in a class that doesn't necessarily feel as challenging as it potentially should be, that teacher would provide them opportunities to learn additional materials on their own outside of the minutes of the school day. And making sure that students are given opportunities to learn in their areas of strength and to demonstrate their learning in their areas of strength. So again, that our GATE students will feel supported and celebrated at every turn. So ways in which that you can support your kids at home, your gifted and talented students at home. First and foremost, and as an English teacher, I can't advocate for this enough, how important it is to provide reading opportunities for your students. Read with them, read to them, and provide lots of different types of literature and reading opportunities for your students. So building an at-home library, or lots of opportunities to visit the public libraries for your students to sort of explore new areas of interest and expand their understandings and expand their learnings. Taking different trips to intellectual places of learning, museums and gardens and aquariums. And so again, it's sort of like a real life learning opportunity for them to have a hands-on experience. Allowing them to sort of struggle a bit with new material on their own and not quickly stepping in and helping them solve those problems for them. The most the greatest possibilities for learning sometimes happen in those areas of struggle. So we want our kids to feel uncomfortable at times, so they have opportunities for growth as well. And then making sure that you are sort of cultivating your students' identity as a citizen of every community of which they're a part, and cultivating that capacity for empathy and for compassion for others really allows them to sort of think three-dimensionally and look outside themselves for other opportunities for learning and growth as well. So as a parent, there's a number of opportunities for you to stay informed at the district level. If you visit the district GATE website at achieve.lausd.net/GATE, there is a parent resources page, and you can subscribe to the parent newsletter that is published quarterly that will sort of keep you up to date on the new findings in terms of the LAUSD GATE program. In addition to that, there are 2 GATE parent meetings that are happening this year. Both of them will be virtual. The district-wide parent GATE meeting will be happening in February, and the details for that meeting will be published in the parent newsletter. And then the annual GATE and SAS parent conference will be happening virtually in March, on March 13th. And again, if you would like details for either one of those opportunities, you'll find them in the GATE parent newsletters. And then finally, if you would like to contact me, if you have any other questions or comments or suggestions that you would like to contribute, I would love to hear what you would have to say. My office hours are Tuesday afternoons from 2:30 to 3:30. The link for that Zoom session is found here on the page. You can also email me. My email address is lkjaeggi@arteshs.org, or you can call our main office at 818-837-6429. And then finally, you can visit the district GATE website, achieve.lausd.net/GATE, or you can email the GATE office directly at gate@lausd.net. Thank you so much for participating and joining me, and I hope that you guys have a great day. Thank you.